Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophie and this channel is chronicling my attempt to get my life back after having been diagnosed with preload failure. So today I just kind of wanted to rant a little bit. Nothing major has happened to make me want to do this rant. It's just a lot of things over time have just sort of added up and I want to rant. So, as the title of the video sort of alludes to, communicating with doctors can be like talking to someone who doesn't speak the same language. I'm not just talking about medical jargon. I don't know if I've said it or not, but I did work in the medical field. So I am familiar with the medical jargon, and it's not that I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when you present doctors with data, objective data, heart rate, pulse ox, test results, data, actual objective data, that they dismiss it, they say it's wrong, they say it's subjective, and whatnot. So that's what I'm going to be ranting about because I am sure a lot of you watching can relate to this. So my issue with communicating to doctors about the data started way back in April of 2020, the first time I went to the ER. I went because my pulse ox walking around the house had been low. I get there, I look fine, according to the doctors, and based on how I look, they are telling me my pulse ox is wrong. They wanted to compare the one I have at home to the one they have at the hospital, but I didn't bring it inside with me, I left it in the car. Anyway, then they changed their attitude when my x-ray came back and I had bilateral pneumonia. And then all of a sudden, they were no longer doubting that my pulse ox had been low. And that trend has sort of continued. The second time I was hospitalized, they didn't believe their own pulse ox. They had me do a walking pulse ox just around the room. And the first time I did it, it dropped to the mid-80s. The second time I did it, it dropped to the low 80s, and the third time I did it, it dropped to 80 before I had to tell them I need to sit down, like I'm gonna pass out. So they did this 3 days in a row because they didn't believe the data. They said I don't act like my pulse ox should be low, I look fine, the pulse ox is wrong, we'll try it again. Even after doing this 3 days in a row, my pulse ox being low, 3 days in a row, I was hospitalized at the time for bilateral pneumonia. The doctor still told me that I looked fine, the pulse ox was probably wrong, and I didn't need home oxygen. Thankfully, the pulmonologist I saw during that hospital stay did believe the pulse ox and did prescribe me home oxygen, which is how I ended up getting it to begin with. So pulse ox has always been an issue. It's never believed. I've bought numerous pulse oxes, which I think I've stated in past videos. I have the cheap one. I have this one that I keep I'm in my computer room right now. I keep it in here because normally when I walk up the stairs, I come in here and I sit down to catch my breath. And if I'm feeling a lot of chest tightness or more short of breath than normal, I will stick my finger in it and record what it says because doctors just don't believe me. It's fine, I'm sure. And even when I do record it, they will still tell me, oh, your pulse ox is wrong, maybe your hands were cold, maybe this happened, maybe that happened, the pulse ox is wrong. I think I've made a video about the different pulse oxes I have. I have the one that connects to my phone, that actually gives a spreadsheet readout with index numbers as to how accurate it is, and they don't believe that one either. So at that point, I was just like, I give up buying them because I spent all this money and you don't believe any of them, so what's the point? Now I'm having trouble with them believing my heart rate. So when I do activities, I'm not even going to call it exercises, when I do activities, I wear a Polar H10 heart rate monitor, a chest strap. I do not have a smartwatch. I don't own one. I don't really trust them in terms of heart rate, oxygen, all that stuff. I'm sure there are ones that are better than others. For what I want, it's a big long thing. I don't have a smartwatch. I don't use them. I have a lot of other gadgets I will use depending on what type of data I want to collect. Heart rate data, I have a Polar H10 chest strap heart rate monitor. I have shared this data with doctors, and I'm now getting, oh, that's probably not an accurate heart rate. Maybe you have an arrhythmia. Have you worn a Holter monitor? Yes, I have worn a Holter monitor. I have worn one twice. I do not have an arrhythmia. This is my heart rate. Here's the graph of my heart rate. It's not a sudden spike. It is, how do you communicate with someone who looks at the data and they go, no, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. When I'm in the hospital, I've had a nurse call the doctor in because my pulse ox was randomly dropping into the 70s, and she kept trying to get the doctors to do something about it, and he just kept saying, the pulse ox is wrong, just change the pulse ox, change the pulse ox, she looks fine, change the pulse ox. And the nurse was exasperated. Like, she apologized to me, and I'd tell her, like, I understand, I've been trying to get them to look at this for, at the time, it was a year and a half, or a year, I think. It's not your fault, thank you for trying. Like, I don't know what to do, either. The last time I was in the ER, in March this year, my pulse ox would randomly drop when I was just sitting in the bed. The alarms would go off. No nurse was in the room at the time, but it's just sort of like, okay, if the pulse ox is wrong and I'm just sitting here not moving, why is the pulse ox wrong? Like, what's going on that's making the pulse ox wrong randomly? Like, I'm not moving. I feel like this should be looked into or something. I don't know. What else? I told you, there's a rant. There's a lot going on at the moment. Tests. So recently I have been told that the echocardiogram I had back in September of 2020 that showed my ejection fraction was 40 to 45% was probably wrong because it is subjective and they probably just looked at it wrong and it wasn't really that low, it wasn't that bad. I have been told the tracheomalacia, or the collapsing of my trachea and now both of my main stem bronchi, probably isn't as bad as it looks on CT scan because, again, I look fine, I act fine, my breathing sounds fine, except if I raise my hand above my head, but I don't wheeze like you would normally or usually hear with severe tracheomalacia. So I'm just banging my head into the wall constantly with doctors of different specialties. It's not just one doctor, it's not just one specialty, it's numerous doctors across specialties who just refuse to believe the data is what it is. I can understand if the data is a one-off, yeah, I'm gonna doubt that. But when I have data over 2 years of cutting the grass and my heart rate being in the 180s, taking a shower and my heart rate being in the 160s, 170s, walking up the stairs and my pulse ox dropping into the 80s, on humid days my pulse ox walking up the stairs dropping into the 70s, like these aren't one-off things, they happen repeatedly with different pulse oxes in different environments, it randomly drops in the hospital, like I don't know. I don't know how to communicate with people in this situation. I love data. I was an athlete before this. I love collecting heart rate data because under normal conditions, that is one way to gauge whether or not you are improving. Can you do more with a lower heart rate? Can you go further with the same heart rate? There's all different sorts of ways you can use your heart rate as an athlete depending on what you're looking for and what type of improvement you're looking to see. So I've been gathering data this whole time. I have screenshots, I have graphs, I have all sorts of stuff, but none of it seems to really matter, or it matters until it doesn't. Like with the echocardiogram, it mattered until it didn't, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, your ejection fraction is probably just normal. It's probably just like 50%, which is low normal, but I mean, it's still normal. It was probably never that low. I'm like, don't you want to check? Because I'm not taking the metoprolol, which I was put on because of the ejection fraction. Well, metoprolol doesn't raise ejection fraction, but that's literally one of the indications for beta blockers. Anyway, it is very frustrating, as I'm sure most, if not all of you, are well aware. I don't know what to do about it. I have a couple doctors who are firmly in my corner, and they don't know what to advise me to do. They apologize. They say they're also banging their head into the wall. They wish they could think of something to do to kind of like prove what's going on, but the way you would prove what's going on is with data, which the doctors aren't believing. So, kind of at a loss. I know this is long. Just bear with me. I'm almost done ranting. Second thing I want to rant about in the same general area is when doctors chart. Now, I have access to the patient portal for all of my doctors, so I can see what their note is. When doctors chart, patient feels more short of breath. Well, this is probably true. What the patient actually told you is their heart rate is higher, and they gave you data about this heart rate. Because I stopped trying to give them subjective opinions of how I feel, because they'll just say that those are all in my head, as the one doctor did with what the oxygen does. So I try to give them as much objective data as I can and not nearly as much subjective data. So when they turn the objective data, hey, I did X and my heart rate was higher than when I do Y, and they turn that into patient states she was more short of breath, that's not what I said. Or when I say, when I stopped taking the Lasix, I gained 8 pounds in 3 days, and I go from urinating 1.5 liters to 3.5 liters, and they chart, patient feels she urinates more while taking Lasix. No, the patient knows how much she urinated while on and when off Lasix, because during those 4 days, I measured it so I could give you data. So, what I'm currently learned is that if you give them subjective data, it doesn't matter because it's subjective and you can't prove it, so it could very easily just be all in your head. If you give them objective data, they will turn it into subjective data, which they can then dismiss because it's not objective and you can't prove it. When they look at tests, if the test doesn't fit the picture sitting in front of them, they will just dismiss that as being wrong. And if there are numerous tests, like the CT scans showing my trachea collapsing to a sliver, they will just dismiss that because, well, you don't look like it. So, that is my rant. Thank you for listening. I appreciate that. If anyone has any advice as to how to deal with this, I am all ears. Please share in the comments down below, because it is frustrating. I don't know how to deal with people who don't listen to data. I very much like data. So, yes, that is going to be the rant for the week. I'm sorry it is so long, but guys, it's been very trying on my end. Very, very trying. And it's frustrating. So I'm gonna end this, download it onto my PC, upload it, get it uploaded tonight, which is Thursday, and I will talk to you guys in Sunday's video. Bye, guys.